Over the past 3 years of my undergraduate experience as a science major, I've come to conclude that there is a large perspective gap between science professors and the students who are science majors, particularly in how the professors believe is the best way to teach versus how students feel is the best way to be taught. In a 3 year study titled Talking About Leaving by Elaine Seymour and Nancy Hewitt, out of 335 students on 7 diverse campuses, 55% of the students switched entirely out of science, engineering, or mathematics during college. Some of the most common complaints by the students included those criticizing faculty teaching, advising, assessment practices, or curriculum design. Now, I'm not saying that these professors aren't capable or qualified enough to teach their classes, because obviously they all have their PhDs and they're extremely knowledgeable about their areas of study, but sometimes I think these professors have a hard time explaining their concepts to students in simpler terms for the students to better understand them. And I also feel like professors pay so much attention to all the nitty-gritty facts of the material they're teaching, and they forget to express the clinical relevance of the topics and why they should be important to their students. In my opinion, this makes the material less interesting for the students to learn and causes students to not be as excited to learn about it.
Well, I feel like sometimes they're very smart and they don't understand that we aren't at that level yet. And it's very hard to understand what they're talking about because technically speaking, they're talking about it at a very advanced level and we are not there. Sometimes they don't know how to make it relatable, so it makes it kind of boring or uninteresting. But really what they're talking about is really fascinating and obviously they love it, but they just don't know how to relate it to like everyday people.
But I think often science professors, they have so much knowledge, so much experience, hands-on experience in their respective fields, that when they're presenting brand new material to undergrads or even grad students, they assume that students should have the same understanding they do about a topic just after presenting the material once. I think a lot of times we get overloaded with so much knowledge and so many facts and so many details, but we don't know how to apply it to the real world or to real science. So I think they need to do a better job at connecting what's real world science to what's conceptual, and I think that would help tie in our understanding of what science is.
They're normally very passionate, which is good considering it can be more difficult material, and it helps having someone who's passionate and really enjoys talking about it, so you don't kind of hate your life as much. But I would say that the issue would be that since they're so involved in the course that they're teaching, they typically don't understand how to explain it any other way. And obviously there's like 300 some people in a class and not everyone thinks the same way, so that can definitely cause some issues.
It's hard as a science educator because every body of science has this certain number of facts that goes along with it. And you sort of feel wedded to or tied to those facts to a certain extent. You teach a class and you're like, well, I need to talk about this and this and this and this. And if you spend all your time just trying to present all the facts, then sometimes it's hard to create opportunities for students to think about those facts and think about the concepts that they're tied to and that interconnect them. And it's difficult to come up with opportunities for students to build skills and do things like that that are going to help them out down the road. I always chuckle to myself a little bit because I don't think most instructors appreciate just how little students retain from our class from a content standpoint. Facts have a place. It's important to, introduce them in many cases, but facts are going to be forgotten in a fairly short order. What's much more important is skill development. And so if students can develop skills, and that means skills like listening comprehension and reading comprehension, and just conceptual ability, analytical ability, communication skills, if they can develop those skills, those skills persist. You don't forget a skill once you've acquired it. It might get rusty if you haven't used it for a while, but skills persist. And so in general, science instructors probably need to spend a little bit more time focusing on skill development, even if it means you have to sacrifice some content along the way. Ultimately, in order for the students to learn, they need to think. And I think as instructors, we all need to evaluate the way we teach. And if developing opportunities to make students think means that we need to cut content, or means that we have to sort of rearrange the way we normally present the class, we have to do that, because that's ultimately the only way that the students are going to learn.
So from the videos of both the students and Dr. Peterson, I think it can be seen that there is a perspective gap among how teachers believe is the good way to teach versus how students respond to that teaching. Overall, I think this perspective gap can and should be fixed, but in order to do it, there needs to be a two-way street with professors and students. So students need to be more open to the idea of thinking of these science topics in order to learn them, even if it may be difficult. Whereas the professors need to understand that they need to develop opportunities to make their students think, and even if this means rearranging the way they present the class.